It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Folks, I found out, I got this post from Scott Richardson, 14 hours ago. Exciting times as today we start this journey again. Although the path is similar, it will not be the same journey as before. Now, I think this is talking about a running for District 91. That's the seat that's currently held by Republican Dan Douglas. Why don't we just ask Scott? We've got Scott on the phone. Hey, Scott, how are you this morning?
I'm good, Paul. Good morning. How are you?
Yeah, so tell us about this. Tell us about this announcement that you made yesterday, sir.
Well, we decided to go ahead and move forward with the announcement based on a number of different factors. Obviously, on Wednesday, the general session, came to an official end. So that's over. But there were a number of catapults within the session this year that created a lot of challenges for me personally. My last round, I ran against Representative Douglas on a number of different pieces, mostly taxation and challenges associated with his need to continue to increase our taxes. He introduced an internet sales tax bill, which, by the way, he reintroduced this year, and we sort of expected that to come back around. And then he again went after more money for roads through raising our taxes on diesel and gasoline at the wholesale level. So we expected to see some of those things, but the real catapult for me this year was some of the social challenges that we saw from Representative Douglas, including challenges associated with what we call the abortion trigger bill. That bill was designed or is designed to give us an immediate impact if Roe versus Wade is ever overturned in our state. And the bill is a well-designed bill, and it provides Arkansans that protection against ongoing abortions in the state if in fact the Supreme Court were to reverse that Roe. So that bill came before the House. Representative Douglas was very unhappy about the bill. Even went to speak in front of the House, what we call the well, to tell us this is a terrible bill and they shouldn't vote for it. That, considering the ramifications of a bill like that, it spoke to me directly. I'm a pro-life individual. I feel that clearly life begins at conception and therefore needs to be protected, not only from a social perspective, but constitutionally, providing those constitutional protection of our rights. And one of the basics of that is life, obviously. So that spoke to me directly, and then we saw him introduce what's called the Physicians-Assisted Suicide Bill, which was a terrible bill, even among physicians-assisted suicide bills, giving no real opportunity to do an evaluation of the patient, giving the patient no time to really think about what's going on or to understand their rights as they move forward, or their ability to manage pain or any other pieces of this. It really was a terribly designed bill and a step backward from a social perspective in regards to conservative values. Those two bills alone really pushed me out of this more of a, okay, well, we're going to see more of the same kind of thing from him, to a, we really have to get this thing moving and we have to make this change. We can no longer afford to continue to live with these kinds of challenges from District 91. So that's really what pushed me to move at this point and to go ahead and get things started. I came up a little bit short in
That's an understatement.
In
a little bit short. I mean, come on, how many votes was it?
It was 12 votes. That's not a lot of people. If I could have reached, I think 7 more folks changed their mind that did vote, or found another dozen people to come out and vote, we could have made a significant change. So it was quite a blow. It spoke to me personally as a we didn't do quite enough. And given that we have more opportunity, more time this year, going ahead and declaring early gives us that much more time to get organized, to get our stuff moving forward, and to reach more people with the message that we have.
I think State Representative Dan Douglas is one of the most vulnerable. I think he was 2 years ago. He's one of the most vulnerable Republicans out there in terms of deviating from the Republican Party platform. And that was just 2 years ago on the tax increases, just the amount of revenue he was trying to get from the people, and he was their point man. He was their lead guy. Now that he voted against the abortion trigger law, which again would have made abortion in Arkansas illegal with the exception of the life of the mother if Roe versus Wade is overturned. Basically, it would allow Arkansas law to be restored to what it was before Roe versus Wade. Now we're talking about, deviating from this social issue that's probably the biggest social issue in the Republican Party platform. Scott, don't you agree?
I do agree. Abortion is a very there's a lot of passionate people on both sides of the issue, and it's been a social challenge for us for quite some time. But the reality is, for those of us who have followed the issue for a number of years, we can clearly see that science no longer supports the pro-choice ideology of what life is. Science supports the concept that life does, in fact, start for that individual at conception, and therefore, because it starts at conception, from a Republican perspective, we say that all life is precious. All life should be protected. All human life should be guarded. And if a human life does start at that conception, from a platform perspective, we have to support the ideology of protecting that life from a constitutional perspective, all the way through from conception all the way through its own end at whatever point during its life that happens. So to deviate from that as a Republican, to step out and not only deviate from that from a basic perspective, but also to step out and passionately speak against the lives of those individuals, and to completely Representative Douglas went to the well to speak against it. Part of his statement was that this decision was between the mother, the physician, and Almighty God, completely ignoring the right of the individual, the baby that's within the mother at that point in time. This child has rights, and it has the basic right of life, and we as Republicans feel that we have to protect that life, and to make a statement like that and completely ignore the rights of the child at that stage in its life is it's very disappointing.
Yeah, and the elephant in the room here, because I was there when Dan Douglas said what you just quoted him as saying, and you could tell that there was a difficult situation with somebody in his family, his niece or something, that had a tragedy, or I believe with a baby. I don't know all of the insights, but and I'm sure it's very painful. I mean, it's not that there aren't bad things that continue to happen, but what you're saying, Scott, and I agree with you. You have to, I think, err on the side of the baby, and there's also these things, and you can look them up, but there's also these things called miracles, where you have the doctor that says that your baby is going to be this, is not going to be viable, and then you have some mothers who just say, you know what, no, I'm not choosing abortion. I think the baby, I'm going to pray, and then you have situations where the baby comes out fine. I mean, it doesn't happen all the time. It probably doesn't happen most of the time, but it can happen. What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, I agree with you, Paul. This is, but that's the entire challenge that we have with this concept of abortion. We eliminate the possibilities at an abortion. You eliminate all of the possibilities that child ever potentially has. Is it likely that every child born is going to be the next Einstein or solve cancer or whatever it is that's out there that needs to be solved, the next big challenge? No, but is there the possibility that they might? Yes. Should they be allowed as a living human to be protected and allowed to live their life, whatever length of life that is?
Yes.
As they choose, or as God chooses and directs that life. We we are not in the position as people to pretend or to attempt to be God and make decisions from that level. We don't have enough information, and we can't possibly foresee the future and what the future brings for any individual. That's the same challenge that you have associated with individuals who are mentally challenged, and the associated abortion push for those.
Yes.
And our move to eliminate that from a legal perspective, and that's a good move. We should protect those individuals. Just because they're going to be different or challenged in their life doesn't give us the right as a people to say you don't have the right to live. That genocide concept is amazing to me, that we're willing to accept that in the society that we live in. We consider ourselves to be more advanced and more forward-thinking, and yet we take these barbaric stances of killing the weakest among us, and it's frustrating that we can't see past that from a division, political division point, and see the real moral ramifications associated with that.
Yeah, and really just the hypocrisy. We are, like you said, we can't play God, and at this point, we're just drawing arbitrary lines in the sand. And the line that's not arbitrary is that life begins at conception. I mean, it's a scientific fact. The very term, conception, I mean, that the very word of that is self-explanatory, We're talking with Scott Richardson. Last night he announced his candidacy for the 91st District. Assuming that Dan Douglas runs again, you'll be challenging him in a Republican primary. Scott, I really appreciate you doing this and throwing your hat in the ring a second time. I know it's hard work to run a campaign. I know it's stressful. But let me ask you this. From a Republican standpoint, you look at somebody like Dan Douglas, and you look at the tax increases he pushed for two years ago. You look at the tax increases he pushed for and was more successful this time. And then you look at, what we were just talking about, the social issues with the assisted suicide, too. We forgot to throw that in there. Not only did he go out there and speak against the pro-life bill and vote against it, he also filed an assisted suicide a bill. That was odd. That came out of nowhere to me.
It's something that he had presented, at least from an idea in previous discussions, and in a previous session there was a discussion around that. The assisted suicide bills that have been passed across the nation by various state legislative bodies have given us some insight into what these bills create from a challenges perspective. And what we've learned in a lot of cases is that bills that, like the bill that Representative Douglas introduced, bills like that that do not require counseling, that do not require opportunities for the patient to have full understanding of what's going on around them, and do not have a psychological evaluation of the current state of mind of the individual, and most definitely doesn't require a waiting period for that individual to really have an opportunity to think about it. What we've discovered is that the number of assisted suicides in those cases is significantly higher than if we ask a patient to spend a little time thinking about it, to speak to someone about it, to actually have some counseling associated with it, and to have the real facts instead of just the fear associated with the end of life, have the real facts associated with what's going to be happening and how they're going to be able to manage their life and have some quality of life as they move forward. So the challenge here becomes we introduce an assisted suicide bill, which is, to me, is morally corrupt all by itself.
Yes.
But then you tack on top of that, we don't really work at all with the individual, the patient, to give them the opportunity to consider the overall ramifications of ending one's own life. And by doing so, we actually encourage additional people to take that step when they could have additional time with their family, could have additional time to make an impact on society. There's a number of different pieces there, but most importantly, they can enjoy the latter portions of that life and actually have an opportunity to get things really settled within their life. So I think that having an assisted suicide bill is morally corrupt by itself, but then to introduce a bill like Representative Douglas did that doesn't really take any steps to protect the patient or protect the patient family, it despicable at least.
You know,
yeah, the moral issues associated with Representative Douglas's this last session and his push for what we often see is a more liberal, significantly more liberal side of things, really put us in a situation where I couldn't continue to sit on the sideline and watch things move forward. But really, this race is not just about what happened and what he did or has done in the past or the challenges. This is about choosing a new direction for District 91. We as a group here in District 91 are continuing to grow. We're changing. We are a very diverse environment, and we have a lot of things that are going on here. But we still have a very conservative ideology around how things should be handled from both a fiscal and a fiscal and a moral perspective. Social issues are very important to us. So we need to push past what Representative Douglas has done in the past, and we need to start looking at how we can make things work better for us in the future. And so I also in my announcement, I put together a few tidbits from my vision of how we progress as a state, how we continue to move forward and advance our state. Listen, we're in a lot of low categories. We have to make some changes. Continuing to do things the same way that we've always done them has continued to put us at the back of the pack. So we've got to find a way to get out of that rut and move forward. And some of the challenges that we see in this state all revolve around financing. We are taxing our people into poverty. The taxation rate. You look at our sales tax rates. You look at the income tax. You look at the taxes across the board. And some of the biggest challenges that we see is the rate at which people are being taxed. It's interesting to me that even Representative Douglas, not that I want to jump back on his voting record, but he even voted against tax relief in the Budget and Finance Committee meetings. Now that alone tells you the challenges that we see from that perspective, and it's not matched by the general perspective of the people that are in District 91. So how do we move forward? So I encourage people that are listening to go out and take a look at I've got a Facebook page, my announcements listed there. It's also obviously going to be publicized elsewhere. If you want to find me on Facebook, facebook.com, vote Scott Richardson. There's some good things that we can do to help empower our people and to really start progressing from an economic perspective. But we've got to do something with the high number of people who are currently not looking for work in Arkansas. Our employment rate, employability rate is in the top 3, meaning the worst 3 of the nation right now. We have to find ways to encourage people to get back to work. And I think that along with a number of other factors, that's going to help us reduce overall taxation burden by distributing that among more people. So it gives us some opportunities. But we have to look past what's been done in the past, and we really got to start focusing on the future and how do we get a path forward from this point to start moving Arkansas out of the backside of things and into the foreground and being a more prosperous community so that all of us citizens that are in our state can actually start moving forward. So I don't want to spend all of my time on your show focused on what Representative Douglas has done, because that's the past for me, and yet we can't change that, but we can prevent any future issues by looking to the future, finding new ways that we can move forward and moving away from.
And I think that's great.
And
I just, I've thrown your release up on the screen here, and I love how specific, the issues that you have here. Legislate to reduce per capita spending, protect the people, protect Arkansas heritage, legislate monument protection. That was obviously an issue. Protect our people. Scott, you do have great ideas moving forward, sir, and I've always been impressed, and we got to do this again. We got to have you on the program more. We got to make a YouTube video out of this, so hopefully you can get it out to the folks of District 91 on social media, and they can get behind your campaign, because I think in terms of what the current status quo is, it's not working. So.
I agree, and I appreciate the opportunity to come on and speak with you and speak to your listeners. And look me up, give me a call. My phone number's listed on the on the announcement, along with email or whatever else that you use to contact. And I'd love to speak with people.
Absolutely. Scott Richardson, appreciate it, sir. Good luck.
Thank you.
All righty. Folks, we talked for a long time, but it was really, really good. And it's always good to talk to folks who are engaged in the legislative process and are watching what their representatives are doing. And that should be a lesson to all state representatives, that there are other people in your community who are watching what you're doing in their name, and they could file at any moment. At any moment.